Wonderful to be here again. We've heard a lot about technology. I want to take you to a place in Indonesia where we do very simple things and which are probably going to be possible in many places in the world. So let's talk about what created the cities. It was actually agriculture that allowed people to settle and to divide tasks and work together. But we have a principle in nature, as a biologist, that is called Overshoot and Collapse. This is an island where the population of deer increased very quickly, and then it collapsed. But this does not just happen to animals. It also happened to the Mayas, to the Anasazis, and in various places in the world. And we are on Earth a little bit like an island, Easter Island, 1722. Admiral Roggeveen from the Netherlands came there. There were very few skinny people left. That once was a paradise, beautiful forest. But the people cut the forest, all the mud flew in the sea, the coral reefs got killed, the fish was gone, food was gone, and the people were stuck on that island. And basically, we are not doing very much different with our planet at this moment. We are reaching very close to 9 planetary boundaries, and 3 of them are actually thought that we already have reached them: climate change, biological diversity, and nitrogen input. And all 3 of these have to do with agriculture. Now, if we look at some of the basic facts, we are actually wasting energy, light, nutrients, water, soil in the way that we are growing our products. And there's going to be a lot of problems with this world when climate change is going to force the migration. If you look at the water contract between India and Bangladesh, when the water from the Himalaya will be coming less, where are all those hundreds of millions of people going to? We're still going to need agriculture for those people to sustain them. And we cannot continue to use fossil sunshine. We still use a lot. Also, the investment in the materials and the buildings that we are having is contributing to that. So cities, yes, you can make them lower footprint, yeah, and you can maybe make it more efficient, but they cannot continue to grow because you want more of this, more of that. So it is still this economic principle that these cities create very unsustainable practices, in my opinion. So agriculture, what people have developed, is going in the wrong way. People have been developing, we heard it yesterday, we're going to increase the productivity per hectare, and that's it. We do some more selection in the genetic area, and that will solve the problems. It will not. I don't think that we need to work towards that direction. Most of the people in the world do not live in these very advanced conditions as you do here in the United States. So agriculture is their main source of livelihood for most of the people in the world, and agriculture leads to the deforestation and all these things that are appearing here behind me, and it creates huge risks. If you see that how few crops that we are using to feed all the world's population, if a disease comes in there, wow, what happened in Ireland? 2.5 million people died because of a fungal disease in the potatoes. In small villages, people live in a very cultural coherence, and they are usually quite happy to stay there. But when you look at the villages, they have very few facilities. They don't have very good medical conditions, and many of the villagers, when the population increases, start moving towards the cities. I was in Tanzania and in the Iringa district, which used to be the biggest agricultural productive area in Tanzania. We now see that it's getting dry, the lakes are going dry, there's no electricity, and all the charcoal that is causing it, the trees made into charcoal, going to Dar es Salaam for the cooking of the people in the cities. So there's something basically wrong. We need to get something going that will allow us to survive with these limited resources. But modern agriculture is only speeding things up. We are really scarring our earth if we look at it. In the tropics, many of the people are working with slash and burn agriculture. They don't have the money to buy expensive fertilizer, they don't have all the tools, but that burning of the vegetation also flushes out the nutrients from the system, and in the end people end up poorer, and you have these grasslands. We got about 28 million hectares of this worthless land. Not even the grass is edible for goats. And then we do reforestation there. But with the climate change, we have more dry periods, so we get these huge fires. And now we have this coal mining going on extremely extensive. Once the coal has been dug out there, people do not rehabilitate them as the mountaintops here. They just leave them like that. Everywhere, these gold mines and the mercury going into the system. We have too many minerals. And then 8 million hectares of oil palms, completely denuding the land and turning this tropical rainforest with all its biodiversity into a biological desert. And then we're opening up the last peat swamps. The peat swamps that contain about 30% of all the terrestrial carbon in this world. So important a buffer for the global climate. So we got enough problems, but where are the solutions? Well, I think we still do have solutions, but they're not located here in the temperate zones. In the tropics, you have a higher light intensity and you can grow crops year-round. And you have to look at forests instead of this large-scale agriculture that is now going on, because forests can capture the light much more efficiently than the agricultural crops can do. So actually, the area of the world that is going to be the new Middle East is the area where you have enough potential to produce sun-based energy, and that is in that green belt. So a natural forest can use the space in the soil and above the soil much more efficiently than any agricultural system with monocultures we have now. And it produces a variety of crops that provide security for the people. If you have these, this is oil palm nursery. If you look at the monoculture compared to that forest, what a difference. If you look at flying with airplanes, putting in the pesticides, the fertilizers, looking at the soil structure, you better have this kind of systems. But look at it as a scientist, very simple. This is what you do here. You plant corn only in the months that it's warm, and then you can harvest from a few weeks of sunshine that in the leaves is then converted to these corn cobs, and that is what the ethanol is that you are mixing now in your fuel. It doesn't help a lot. In the tropics, you can grow a bit more because you have more crops year-round. But if you have a crop that is from a tree, then you can harvest more regularly, and still we can do better. I'll come to that. So we have to imitate nature. We have to create systems that are mixed, like the Mayas. They would be planting corn with beans and cucumbers, all mixed in one system. So each of them would have less than the 100% they would get by themselves, but in total still be 200%. So in our production systems, we have to go towards those systems. How can villages become sustainable by using forest? First of all, they need to be agroforests. They need to be forests that produce food and products and security for the local people that can do all these ecological functions that I've been talking about, but especially that can provide products that are marketable and that are going to be sustainable and that can be continuously produced, that are not going to be out of fashion. And that needs to be sugar, because sugar is basically the result of rainfall, sunshine, and the carbon dioxide that we have too much of in the atmosphere. And we have a champion of photosynthesis in the form of this sugar palm. Most of the trees and plants that you harvest need to be processed, and then you get some energy out of it. But from this palm, actually, you can tap directly the flowers every day, and every day you have a stream of energy coming. So you don't store it, it's direct conversion, a biophotovoltaic converter capturing the sunlight, and that's an energy equivalent of 82 barrels of oil per hectare per year. That's a huge amount of energy, and at the same time, with roots that can go up to 12 meters deep into the soil, you can store carbon from the atmosphere over hundreds of years, continuously adding to that storage and improving the productivity. If you look at the energy issues in the world, for the short term, we really are going to need biomass. A lot of the people in the world are already cooking on biomass. But biomass has the potential to create lots of problems, environmental, social. But it is happening. Everywhere we see that people already have formulated the laws that so much ethanol needs to be mixed in, so much fuel needs to be replaced by biofuel from diesel, etc. So it's going to happen. And the options, what do we have? There is a lot of plants that can produce energy in the form of either sugar-based or oil-based. And the productivity varies a lot. But what is more important is, what is the climate effect? What is the effect upon the jobs? What is the effect upon the security of the people? So if we look at solutions, there is all these different plants. And then you got this one on the bottom, and that I've been studying, which, if you convert it to the same energy, diesel, because it contains a bit more energy per ton than ethanol does, it stands out by a factor 4, huge. And it achieves that by a mere 70 trees per hectares in a mixed forest, because these sugar palms cannot grow in a monoculture. I'd like to take you to my village. I'm from Indonesia. This is in the mountains of North Sulawesi. This is the Massara mountain, and it used to be barren and causing a lot of floods and problems, and now the forest is back, the clouds are back, the rain is back. And I have a very big personal interest in the sugar palms, because I learned a very interesting mathematical formula that 1 wife is equal to 6 sugar palms. So, well, I'm not being completely honest, because I also had to plant 10 timber trees so that when our children were big, they could have timber to build a house. Actually, these people thought very carefully, this tribe, my wife is the tribal queen there, about how their future was going to look like. And it turned out that 6 sugar palms is enough to get enough income for a young family of 2. That's quite amazing. Here's a piece of forest that belongs to a nephew of my wife, and we made an inventory. And those dark green trees are the ones that are actually producing the sugary juice. That already is producing 2 to 3 times more juice per hectare, if you could tap all the trees, than sugarcane. How is that possible? It's not being done because of this. That juice starts immediately fermenting the moment it comes out of the tree, and in order to preserve it, you have to boil it. So you need all the trees, you will have to destroy all the forest around it. So unfortunately, couldn't be used. But we have this great potential from the sugar palms. Once you have that forest there, it starts converting the sunlight into sugar every day very efficiently. I'm not going to be talking about all these scientific things, but you can look it up later. They are the champions of photosynthesis. This is what a mixed sugar palm forest looks like. This is a forest that can produce many times more energy per hectare than any of the monocultures, while still having 50 other species of products that can benefit the local people. And once you have this forest, 1 tree can be producing here in the middle. This one will take over in about 9 months. I can see it from the leaf arrangement. And then maybe later on, this one will take over this one. So you always have a number of producing trees on any hectare, but not a monoculture. And this productivity can be tapped year-round at extremely high efficiency and 20 times the job of sugarcane or of oil palm. So this is what I believe we need. So can we do it on this kind of land? We got 28 million hectares of these grasslands. At the TED Talk, I have already shown how we did a reforestation project. From that area, we created this forest in a mere 4 years with 1,232 different tree species, and got a lot of biodiversity back. And by an integration of the planning modules, we could create thousands of jobs and income, and even create a place where orangutans also had a safe place. Let me take you back to my village, to the Massara mountain. There, when I got there 30 years ago, it was still a bit of forest, but people went quickly up to the mountains, and the people were enticed to start using different agricultural crops that would be marketable outside of their area. But that resulted in more fertilizer, more pesticides, less organic matter in the soil, more erosion, less water retention, falling dry rivers in the dry season. The water supply really broke down, and the people went up higher in the mountains, and it became really a serious problem. If you look at the area here, there's just a few patches of forest left there, and there is this lake, this Highland Lake, which was very important because it provides the electricity for almost the whole province. But that lake used to be 56 meters deep, and now it's only 30 meters deep because of the erosion, because of the expanding agriculture. And the people in the fishery are losing their jobs. The water hyacinth that is growing very fast because of all the nutrients coming down from the mountains are now clogging up the canals and causing flooding when it is heavy rainfall. And because of the irregular electricity supply that got blocked by the water hyacinth, and because the water didn't flow regularly anymore, there was no new investment in the industry, although there were opportunities. So there were jobs being lost. At the same time, those nutrients flew out from the lake into the sea and devastated part of the coral reefs, which are an important source of income for the tourists. And the decreasing land availability, while the number of people increased, led to a speeding up of the whole process. So the worsening economic conditions created a vicious circle. So something had to be done. All these problems we had, rivers, no more fish, all the diseases became more prevalent, temperature went up, and on top of that, corruption made the gap between the rich and the poor bigger, which again made it harder to do changes. So we had this kind of forest there. But how can we make this multiple species forest useful for the local people? So they are useful, but the products can only be marketed locally. And because the variation in quality and you don't have enough to provide it to bigger projects, and the products are highly perishable. For example, the fruits, you can't just sell them from those remote locations, as is the most parts of the world. And for all these reasons, the farmers actually followed the recommendations of the government. And what did the government say? You guys are going to grow corn. Here's the fertilizer, here's the seeds. You take a microcredit. The corn is shipped to Java. It is mixed with a bit of garbage from fish gut. And then you send it back to the people there. And then you can grow your pigs using that feed. Now, that didn't make a lot of sense. So the sugar palms are quite interesting, and they are risky to tap, and that juice, the palm juice, is quite good tasting, and that causes a lot of social problems. So jobs, sugar palms, how do we deal with that? I built this factory. It's the world's first sugar palm factory. And we set up this factory using waste geothermal steam. So you had this big installation here, the turbines, and the steam would then go through this pipe, through this condenser, and then in those cooling ponds, and then you inject it back into the soil, and it becomes steam again and more electricity. So all we did was using 5% of that steam, run it through the factory, because they had a problem with too much heat. The farmers had too little timber. So all we did was bringing the juice to the place where the heat was, and that could save us 200,000 trees a year. So they started producing this sugar. Now, sounds all very simple, but where's the key? You have to go to the village level. This is how we started. This is my wife also. And we had all those consultations, and we had a palm wine contest, because palm wine is very interesting. So we also brought in, of course, the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church, and the local leaders. And the people did show up. About 1,000 of them came. And they did participate in the palm wine contest. Of course, they had to eat. And after they had eaten, they needed a little bit of rest. And that was the moment to explain to them what we were planning to do with the factory. And so the palm tappers started discussing. And they decided, OK, we're only going to do it if it's going to be according our playing rules. So we want to have a fair game. Yeah? We want to have democracy. And we're going to do it in this way. We want so much money. So they elected leaders for each of the villagers, which had to be a tapper, which had to be living in the village themselves, and had to be responsible to the tappers. So the tappers each got jerrycans, got some special knives, and they climbed up the trees and then would slice off every day a millimeter of that flowering stem, and another bucket of palm juice would come out with a lot of sugar in it, and people would bring it to the roadside in the village, and there it would be their coordinator that would measure how many liters and what is the sugar concentration. No dispute possible. And then they would get the pay, and everybody was happy. So they got more shirts, they got insurance, and they started organizing themselves, and they have an annual shareholder meeting where they decide what to do. And guess what? These people not only decided to give fellowships to poor children and help the orphans, they also are now protecting wildlife. Now the forest is coming back, and there's an explosion of wildlife taking place. And at the same time, this sugar palm has 60 other products. But some of these products, honey, or the palmite, or the fruits, or the starch, or the carbohydrate juice, they are food products. So here is a tree that produces energy, but also produces food security. So can we do this elsewhere? Yes. It can be done on about 1.6 billion hectares, where we have enough people, the right conditions. And actually, with 540 million hectares, we would be able to replace all the world's oil in 2030. So there's lots of examples where we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.